The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 7 as Claire Montgomery adjusted the final fork on the dining table. The silverware gleamed under the chandelier's light, each piece placed exactly 3 centimeters from the plate's edge. She stepped back to survey her work, brushing a stray auburn curl behind her ear. Perfect. The thought tasted bitter. Ethan, she called up the staircase, her voice echoing through the too-quiet house. Dinner's ready. No response. She wiped her palms on her linen apron, the one Richard had brought back from Milan last year. The embroidered M had begun to fray at the edges. The garage door rumbled open. Claire's spine straightened instinctively as Richard's polished Oxfords clicked across the marble foyer. He entered the dining room smelling of bergamot and expensive paper, his tailored suit unwrinkled despite the late hour. "You're home early," she said. Richard set his briefcase on the sideboard without looking at her. The Henderson meeting moved to tomorrow. The ice in his scotch clinked as he poured himself a drink. Claire watched his Adam's apple bob with the first swallow, the way his tie knot stayed perfectly centered. "Where's Ethan?" "Upstairs, I think." "It's his, I know what day it is." Richard checked his watch. "We'll eat at 7:30. I need to review the contracts." Claire's nails bit into her palms as he disappeared into his study. The vacuum seal of the door clicking shut made her shoulders tense. She turned to the staircase just as Ethan appeared on the landing. Her breath caught. The boy, no, the man, standing there bore little resemblance to the child who clung to her hand on his first day of school. His broad shoulders strained against the fabric of his navy button-down, the same shade as his eyes. When had his jawline become so sharp? "You okay, Mom?" Claire blinked. "Of course. She gestured to the table. "I made your favorite." Ethan descended the stairs with that easy grace she envied, his socked feet silent on the steps. He paused beside her, close enough that she caught the scent of his cologne, something citrusy and warm, nothing like Richard's austere bergamot. "Pot roast." He grinned, and for a fleeting moment, Claire remembered the gap-toothed smile of his childhood. She forced a laugh. "With the carrots you hate. Still trying to poison me, I see." Their shared smile lingered a beat too long. Claire looked away first, smoothing her apron again. The grandfather clock chimed the half-hour as Richard emerged from his study. He took his seat at the head of the table without comment, already scanning something on his phone. Claire lit the candles. The flames trembled. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she said, placing the steaming dish before Ethan. Richard finally looked up. 18. Time to start thinking about the future. His tone suggested this was a business negotiation, not a celebration. Ethan's fingers tightened around his water glass. "I have been." Claire watched the tendons in her son's hand flex as she served the pot roast. Her own hands were steady, years of practice hiding tremors. The dining room filled with the sounds of silverware and china, the occasional perfunctory question from Richard, the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. Outside, twilight deepened to night. Claire studied the 2 men at her table, one who had everything and gave nothing, the other who looked at her with an understanding that made her chest ache. The candles burned lower. Somewhere beneath the clinking forks and murmured conversation, Claire felt it, the first thread of their carefully constructed life beginning to unravel. The Atlantic wind carried the scent of salt and seaweed as Claire stepped onto the sun-bleached boardwalk, her sandals clicking against the worn planks. She adjusted the wide brim of her straw hat, watching as Ethan loped ahead, his bare feet silent on the warm wood. "Slow down," she called, shifting the heavy picnic basket to her other arm. Ethan turned, walking backward with that effortless grace that reminded her of his high school soccer days. The morning sun gilded his shoulders beneath the thin white t-shirt, highlighting the muscles that had appeared seemingly overnight last summer. "I told Dad we'd be at the North Cove," he said, squinting against the glare. Claire's grip tightened on the basket handle. Richard had barely glanced up from his laptop when they'd left, murmuring something about quarterly reports. She could still see him in her mind's eye, the way his reading glasses had slid down his nose, the single finger he'd raised in acknowledgement when she'd said goodbye. The boardwalk ended abruptly, giving way to a narrow path through the dunes. Sea oats whispered against each other in the breeze as Claire followed Ethan down the winding trail. Her sandals filled with warm sand that gritted between her toes with every step. "You okay back there?" Ethan paused at the crest of the final dune, his hand outstretched. Claire hesitated before taking it. His palm was warm and slightly rough from working on his car. The contact lasted only a second, but she felt the imprint linger like a brand as they crested the dune together. The cove spread before them, a perfect crescent of untouched sand flanked by weather-sculpted cliffs. The tide was out, leaving behind a mosaic of tidal pools that glittered like shattered mirrors in the sunlight. "Still our spot," Ethan said softly. Claire's throat tightened. They hadn't come here since Ethan was 14, back when Richard used to join them on these outings. She could almost see the ghost of her younger son splashing in the shallows, his laughter carried away by the years. Where should we, eh? Here. Ethan had already spread out the oversized beach towel near a sheltered curve of the cliff. He took the basket from her, their fingers brushing again. You brought the good blanket. Claire smoothed the familiar blue and white striped fabric with trembling hands. Your grandmother gave this to us when you were born. Ethan knelt beside her, unpacking the basket with efficient movements. I remember. You used to wrap me in it after bath time. The memory surfaced unbidden. Ethan at 6 years old, his hair dripping, tiny hands clutching the blanket's edge as she'd scooped him up. The way he'd smelled of baby shampoo and innocence. Claire busied herself with the sunscreen, squeezing too much into her palm. The coconut scent overwhelmed her for a moment. Need help with that? Ethan's voice startled her. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, something between amusement and that new, unsettling intensity that had appeared in his eyes these past months. I can manage, she said too quickly, rubbing the lotion onto her arms. The silence stretched as they ate their chicken salad sandwiches. Claire watched the gulls wheel overhead, tracking their graceful arcs against the cloudless sky. The ocean breathed in and out, a steady rhythm that usually calmed her. Today it felt like a countdown. You missed a spot. Ethan's voice was closer than she expected. Claire turned to find him leaning toward her, his gaze fixed on her shoulder. What? Your sunscreen. He reached out, his fingertip tracing a line just above her collarbone. You missed here. Claire's breath caught. The touch was feather-light, gone in an instant, but the skin beneath tingled as if burned. I thank you. Ethan didn't move away. Up close, she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes, the faint stubble darkening his jaw. When had her little boy become this? This man watching her with such careful attention. The breeze shifted, carrying the distant laughter of children from further down the beach. The normalcy of the sound shattered the moment. Claire busied herself with repacking the picnic basket, her movements jerky. We should head back soon. Your father doesn't expect us for hours. Ethan stretched out on the blanket, folding his arms behind his head. Relax, Mom. It's my birthday. The way he said, Mom, sounded different today. Less a title, more challenge. Claire adjusted her hat again, suddenly aware of every inch of exposed skin between her sundress straps and the tops of her thighs. The sun climbed higher, warming the sand around them. Claire closed her eyes against the glare, listening to the waves and Ethan's steady breathing beside her. When his fingers brushed against her bare shoulder again, she told herself it was just the sunscreen. When they lingered, tracing idle patterns along her skin, she pretended not to notice. When his touch drifted lower, dipping beneath the edge of her dress strap, Claire opened her eyes to find Ethan watching her with a question in his gaze. The ocean roared in her ears. Somewhere down the beach, a child called for their mother. Claire didn't move away. The drive home from the beach stretched like taffy in the summer heat. Claire gripped the steering wheel at precisely 10 and 2, her knuckles bleached white against the tan leather. The air conditioning blasted but couldn't erase the salt-sticky feeling on her skin, or the memory of Ethan's fingers tracing patterns below her shoulder blades. You're quiet. Ethan's voice startled her. He'd rolled down the passenger window, letting in the briny scent of marshland as they crossed the bridge back to town. The wind tousled his hair, still damp from his quick rinse in the ocean before they'd left. Claire focused on the dotted yellow lines ahead. Just thinking about dinner. A lie. The chicken she'd defrosted sat forgotten in the fridge. The grocery list stuck to the freezer door, milk, eggs, Richard's favorite coffee, seemed like artifacts from someone else's life. Ethan shifted beside her, the car's leather seats creaking. We should do this more often. Claire's foot slipped on the accelerator. The car lurched forward before she regained control. Sorry, she murmured, but Ethan wasn't looking at the road. His gaze burned a hole through her profile. You didn't answer. The traffic light ahead turned yellow. Claire pressed the brake harder than necessary. Your father isn't home until 8 on Thursdays. Ethan's knee brushed against the gearshift, inches from her thigh. We have the house to ourselves. The light turned green. Claire didn't move. Behind them, a horn blared. 4:37 p.m. The house swallowed them whole. Claire busied herself emptying the picnic basket in the kitchen, scraping leftover potato salad into the trash with unnecessary force. The refrigerator hummed its familiar song as she rearranged condiments, avoiding the mirror-like surface of the stainless steel where her reflection might appear. Ethan's footsteps echoed through the empty rooms upstairs, his bedroom, the bathroom, then Richard's study. Claire froze when she heard the squeak of his father's desk chair. She found him there minutes later, spinning slowly in Richard's leather throne, his long legs stretched across the Persian rug they'd bought in Morocco 15 years ago. Get out of your father's chair. Ethan didn't move. He held up a framed photo, their little family at Disney World, Ethan wedged between them and Mickey Mouse ears. Remember when he missed Space Mountain because of a conference call? Claire's fingers itched to snatch the frame away. Instead, she hovered in the doorway, the hardwood floor creaking beneath her bare feet. She changed into shorts and an old Yale t-shirt, Richard's, from his alma mater. The fabric suddenly felt too thin. Your father works hard to... To what? Ethan set the photo face down on the desk. Provide this. His hand swept across the room, the mahogany bookshelves, the golf trophies, the humidor that cost more than Claire's first car. He doesn't even see you. Claire's pulse thrummed in her throat. That's not true, isn't it? Ethan stood in one fluid motion, closing the distance between them. The citrus and salt scent of him overwhelmed the room's usual leather and whiskey aroma. When was the last time he touched you? The question hung between them, vulgar and undeniable. Claire's mouth went dry. Downstairs, the grandfather clock chimed 5 times. Ethan reached past her to push the door shut. 6:12 p.m. Dappled evening light filtered through the plantation shutters, painting tiger stripes across the rumpled sofa in Richard's study. Claire lay very still, her head pillowed on Ethan's bare chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. Somewhere beneath the haze of sweat and shame, a terrible thought took root. This feels like coming home. Ethan's fingers traced idle circles on her shoulder, the same spot he'd missed with the sunscreen. His other hand toyed with a strand of her hair, wrapping it around his index finger like he used to do as a child when she read him bedtime stories. Claire closed her eyes against the sting of tears. The garage door rumbled open beneath them. Both froze. Richard was home early. The garage door's mechanical groan might as well have been a gunshot. Claire's body moved before her mind could process, launching upright from the sofa, her bare feet slipping on the Persian rug. The study air, thick with sweat and shame, suddenly felt unbreathable. Get dressed. The whisper tore from her throat raw as a wound. Ethan moved with infuriating calm, pulling his shirt over his head in one smooth motion. His fingers lingered at the hem, revealing a strip of tanned abdomen that made Claire's stomach clench with fresh guilt. Relax, he murmured, stepping into his discarded shorts. He always showers first. The casual observation, this intimate knowledge of Richard's routines, sent ice water through Claire's veins. How long had Ethan been watching? Planning? Downstairs, keys jingled. Dress shoes clicked across marble. Claire's hand shook as she fastened her bra beneath the Yale t-shirt. The fabric smelled like Ethan now, salt and sunscreen and something darker beneath. She should burn it. The bathroom door slammed downstairs. Water pipes groaned to life. Ethan caught her wrist as she reached for the study door. Look at me. She couldn't. His thumb stroked her racing pulse. This changes nothing. The lie hung between them as Claire fled. 6:27 p.m. Steam billowed from the master bathroom like fog as Claire scrubbed her skin raw beneath the scalding spray. The water turned her flesh lobster red, but no amount of scrubbing could erase. 1. The imprint of Ethan's teeth on her collarbone. 2. The way she'd arched against him when. 3. The sound she'd made. Claire gagged, bracing against the tile. The shower curtain ripped back. Richard stood framed in the doorway, his tailored suit untouched by the steam. His gaze traveled from her wet hair to her heaving chest to the angry red marks she'd just been scrubbing. Meeting ran late. His voice held its usual detached calm. Order something for dinner. The curtain swished closed. Claire sank to the shower floor, hot water beating her back. He hadn't noticed. Or worse, he didn't care. 7:49 p.m. Dinner was a silent affair. Claire pushed risotto around her plate, tracking the way candlelight flickered across Richard's reading glasses as he scanned financial reports beside his wine glass. Ethan sat across from her, demolishing his third serving with the appetite of youth. His bare foot brushed her ankle beneath the table, once, twice, before she jerked away hard enough to rattle the silverware. Richard glanced up. Problem? No. Claire's napkin slipped from her lap. When she bent to retrieve it, she found Ethan's phone on the floor beside her chair. The screen glowed with a half-written text. Tonight. My room. Same as. Claire stood so fast her chair toppled. I'm not hungry. Upstairs, she locked herself in the master bedroom and pressed a pillow to her mouth to muffle the scream building in her chest. 11:03 p.m. The grandfather clock's chimes seeped under the bedroom door like poison. Claire lay rigid beside Richard's sleeping form, tracking the digital clock's glow from 11:03 to 11:17 to 11:42. At midnight, Ethan's door creaked open down the hall. Footsteps paused outside her room. A slip of paper whispered beneath the door. Claire waited until the footsteps retreated before retrieving it. A Polaroid from last summer's beach trip, edges curled with age. On the back, in Ethan's jagged script, "You've always been mine." The Polaroid burned against Claire's palm like a live coal. She stared at the captured moment. Last summer, Ethan's arms slung carelessly around her shoulders, her own smile bright with uncomplicated joy. The edges were worn soft from handling. How long? The question coiled around her throat as dawn bled through the plantation shutters. Richard's alarm would sound in 17 minutes. She'd counted every second since midnight. 6:03 a.m. Steam curled from Claire's coffee mug as she stood at the kitchen island, watching the backyard sprinklers paint rainbows over the manicured lawn. The house smelled of citrus cleaner and freshly ground beans. Normalcy she'd constructed like a stage set. Footsteps on the stairs. Ethan entered shirtless, sleep-mussed hair brushing his eyebrows. He moved to the refrigerator with the casual ownership of someone who'd already claimed every square inch of this house. Of her. Morning. His voice was gravel rough. Claire's grip tightened on her mug. "We need to talk." Ethan poured orange juice directly from the carton, the muscles in his back flexing. "So talk." The garage door rumbled open, Richard leaving for his morning squash game. Their window was 6 minutes. Claire set down her coffee with deliberate calm. "This ends today." Ethan turned, juice dripping from his chin onto his bare chest. He looked her up and down, the high-necked blouse, the sensible slacks, the wedding ring she hadn't removed, and smirked. "Why?" "Because it's wrong." The words tasted like ash. Ethan stepped closer, trailing sticky fingers along the marble countertop. "You didn't think it was wrong yesterday." The memory of the study sofa, his mouth hot on her skin, flashed behind her eyelids. Claire forced herself to meet his gaze. "I'm your mother. And I'm the only one who sees you." He caged her against the island, orange juice and sleep warm on his breath. "Dad didn't even notice the marks I left on you." Claire's pulse roared in her ears. Somewhere beneath the shame, something darker uncoiled. The terrifying realization that part of her wanted him to kiss her right now, to prove Richard's indifference once and for all. The grandfather clock chimed the quarter hour. Claire shoved against his chest. "Enough." For the first time, Ethan looked uncertain. 8:17 a.m. The car idled outside the bus station, its air conditioning no match for the July heat pressing against the windows. Ethan stared at the duffel bag in his lap. "You're kicking me out." Claire kept her eyes on the rearview mirror. The early admission program at Stanford starts Monday. A lie. The envelope in her purse held a one-way ticket to Paris and the contact information for a therapist specializing in attachment disorders. Ethan's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Running away won't change anything." Claire finally looked at him, really looked, and saw the little boy who'd cried when she dropped him off at kindergarten. The teenager who'd brought her daisies after her first miscarriage. The young man who'd learned all the wrong lessons from his father's neglect. "It has to," she whispered. The bus doors hissed open. 3:42 p.m. The house exhaled when Claire returned, walls contracting, floorboards sighing under her weight. She moved through rooms like a ghost, collecting remnants. 1. Ethan's favorite cereal box from the pantry. 2. The frayed blue blanket from his bed. 3. The Polaroid still warm from her pocket. The fireplace accepted her offerings without judgment. Flames licked at Ethan's smile, curling it to blacken nothingness. Claire watched until her eyes watered. Upstairs, Richard's study door stood ajar. She pushed it open to find him at his desk, golf trophies gleaming in the afternoon light. He didn't look up from his paperwork. "Ethan, get off all right?" Claire studied the man she'd married. The precise part in his hair, the starched collar, the wedding band he still wore after 22 years. "He'll be fine," she said. The lie settled between them, comfortable as an old sweater. 9:16 p.m. Moonlight silvered the empty wine glass on Claire's nightstand. Richard snored softly beside her. One hand curled loosely on his chest. She watched the digital clock flip to 9:17, then 9:18. At 9:23, she rose and walked to Ethan's room. The stripped bed gaped like a wound. Claire lay down carefully, pressing her face into the pillow that still smelled of him, salt and sunscreen and the faintest trace of the baby shampoo she'd used until he was 5. Somewhere in the dark, the grandfather clock chimed. Claire closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would call a divorce lawyer. Tomorrow, she would burn the Yale t-shirt hidden beneath her sweaters. Tonight, she let herself remember. Epilogue. 6 months later. The postcard arrived on a Tuesday. No return address, just a blurred photo of the Eiffel Tower at night and 3 words in familiar handwriting. I still dream. Claire held it over the kitchen sink as she lit a match. The flames caught quickly,